back. You're watching France 24. These are the international headlines this hour. Elections delayed by a week in the Democratic Republic of Congo as officials say they are unable to organise the poll in time for Sunday. The vote is already 2 years overdue. France says it's keeping troops in Syria, insisting the Islamic State group remains a threat. This a day after the US President Donald Trump said he would be pulling troops because the Islamists had been defeated. And Vladimir Putin welcomes the withdrawal of US troops from Syria and accuses British politicians of trying to thwart Brexit. The Russian leader speaks during his annual press conference. First, though, it's already 2 years behind schedule. Now, elections in the Democratic Republic of Congo are being delayed once again. The Electoral Commission says it's unable to organise the vote by Sunday, and the election will now be held a week later on December 30th. Voters are to choose a replacement for President Joseph Kabila, who's been in power for nearly 18 years. Opposition leaders have called the delay unacceptable, as François Weber reports.
After days of uncertainty, it's now official. Sunday's presidential election in the Democratic Republic of Congo will be postponed by a week.
The presidential, legislative and provincial votes will take place on the 30th of December 2018.
The Electoral Commission said its decision was based on the technical and logistical difficulties to organize the vote itself. On Wednesday, fires in Kinshasa had destroyed thousands of ballot boxes and bulletins. This comes amid tense conditions in the run-up to the election. On Thursday, the governor of Kinshasa had declared a ban on campaigning in the capital, leaving opposition candidate Martin Fayulu blocked outside the city, while his supporters faced off against riot police. In the western province of Mai-Dombe, ethnic clashes last week left at least 45 dead, while in the east, there are reports of a new Ebola outbreak. Sunday's election was meant to decide a successor to President Joseph Kabila, who's been in power for now 17 years. But Congolese voters will have to wait just a little longer to pick their new leader.
France says it's keeping troops in Syria as the Islamic State group does remain a threat. It contradicts Donald Trump's claim that the Islamists have been defeated, his reason for pulling troops from Syria yesterday. The move has also been criticised by America's Kurdish allies, but it's been welcomed by the Russian President Vladimir Putin. Russian forces have been supporting Syria's President Bashar al-Assad since 2015. Shirley Sipon reports.
He's the first world leader to officially agree with Donald Trump's assessment on Syria. While various leaders and experts say the Islamic State group is weakened but not defeated yet, Russian President Vladimir Putin says he agrees with Trump. The man who has largely deployed Russian forces in Syria to keep his ally Bashar al-Assad in power says the U.S. is right to pull out right away.
The presence of US troops is illegitimate. It has not been confirmed by United Nations Security Council. So if the US has decided to leave Syria, that is the right decision.
US allies are concerned, though. A pullout will allow the Islamic State group to rebuild, say the Kurds, who have been fighting the terrorist organization on the ground. Same analysis from the UK, Germany, and France, who has been attacked at home by terrorists claiming allegiance to the Islamic State group. We have to fully and definitely defeat the last strongholds of this terrorist organization, tweeted France's Armed Forces Minister. Others yet are concerned by how the U.S. departure will shift the power balance in the Middle East. With the U.S. gone, Turkey can now easily launch its announced ground operation against America's Kurdish ally, who Recep Tayyip Erdogan calls a terror group. And Iran, who has backed Bashar al-Assad and armed groups in Syria and Lebanon, could also see its position strengthened.
And it's not just America's allies abroad criticising the move. Senior Republicans are also calling on President Trump to reconsider. Here's Senator Lindsey Graham.
This decision, I believe, has been made by the president, not with sound military advice against it. I think his entire national security team has expressed concerns about withdrawing now. I was willing to support a Democrat if he followed sound military advice. I'm willing to fight a Republican if he don't.
Well, aside from praising Donald Trump over that troop withdrawal from Syria, the Russian leader Vladimir Putin has also praised the British for voting to leave the European Union. Putin made the comments during his annual Q&A session with journalists. It lasted nearly 4 hours, and in it, the Russian leader touched on a range of foreign and domestic policy issues. Our Moscow correspondent Nick Holdsworth told us more.
It's the 14th annual press conference Vladimir Putin has done since he first became president in the year 2000. He took a few years off when Dmitry Medvedev, the current prime minister, took his place and kept the Kremlin throne warm for him. I mean, as you just mentioned, there was praise for Trump over Syria. There were words of support for Mrs. May, not that she may welcome those in number 10 tonight. And there were 66 questions from 53 journalists during the course of the 4-hour marathon, which Putin prepares for meticulously. One small surprise today was that there's the editor of The Insider, which is a Russian investigative unit which worked with the British team Bellingcat to expose the identity of the alleged Russian military agents who the British police say poisoned Sergei Skripal, the ex-Russian spy, and his daughter Yulia in Salisbury in March. Roman Dobrokotov, who's the editor of The Insider, was denied entry to the press conference before it even opened, denied entry by officers of the Russian Federal Security Service. Mr. Dobrokotov later said that he considered it a badge of honor to have been denied entry to this annual, as you say, stage-managed event in which 1,702 journalists, that's a record number, sat through the 4 hours.
Well, the UN envoy to Syria says that efforts to find a political solution to the conflict have failed. Staffan de Mistura told the UN Security Council tonight that a committee tasked with writing a new constitution for the war-torn country would not be put together by the end of the year. And for that, he said he was very sorry.
I deeply regret what has not been achieved. And I'm sorry, more could have been done and was not possible. I think we in the Security Council together should share that regret too, and I know we do it. But we have identified and put in place some of the key building blocks on which the future process can build.
France 24's Jessica Lemazurier has more on that from New York.
The question on everyone's mind during this UN Security Council meeting on Syria was what now? What now after Trump's announcement that he's pulling his troops out of Syria? Now, Staffan de Mistura, the special envoy, was giving his last briefing to the Security Council in his role. He apologised, saying that he was sorry that he has not achieved his aim of bringing together the various parties to form a constitutional committee by the end of December. He said he'd be handing over to his successor and said the onus was on the most influential members of the Security Council to find a political solution for Syria. The US ambassador to the United Nations, Nikki Haley, was not present at this meeting. She was replaced by the United States mission's political coordinator, Rodney Hunter, and he said that the United States would be keeping up its fight against the Islamic State in Syria using all its instruments, whatever that means. That was met by some scepticism by other Western powers, the United Kingdom and France. The French ambassador to the United Nations, François Delattre, said that France did not believe that the fight against Daesh in Syria was over. He said it was far from over and that France would continue to support its Kurdish and its Arab allies and fight alongside them, in particular in northern Syria.
Thousands of travellers have been delayed, diverted or stuck on airplanes after drones flew over one of the UK's busiest airports. Gatwick Airport was forced to close at 9 o'clock local time last night and remains shut more than 24 hours later. Authorities are yet to discover who is controlling the drone, but they have ruled out any links to terrorism. The army has now been called in to help.
Peak winter travel season at the UK's second largest airport. On Thursday, all flights from Gatwick Airport were grounded after drones were identified flying illegally over its airfield. More than 110,000 passengers have seen their travel plans disrupted due to the security measure. Airport officials say the public safety is their priority.
We believe there are only 1 or 2 drones, but the reality is there's a 1 kilometre ban of drones around an airport, and once you have that breached, then it isn't safe to operate your airport. This is a deliberate act by a perpetrator who sought to generate a huge amount of disruption, and that's exactly what's happened today.
While a manhunt is underway to catch the drone operator, suffering passengers said they were frustrated to not be able to make their journeys during the festive season to be with their families.
It's my daughter's birthday today, so it's gone all wrong, and we've been looking forward to this for so long and planning it for so long. So yeah, not the best start to Christmas anyhow. You know, you can come and see this queue and all the lives that are affected today. You know, everybody's got a story to tell.
Security officials say there is still no time set for the airport to reopen. Gatwick lies just south of London and serves more than 228 destinations in 74 countries for 45 million passengers a year.
And we end with an exciting new discovery by archaeologists in Peru. They've uncovered a ceremonial structure which dates back to before the famous Inca Empire. Adaba Abbas has the story.
32 graves among rocks that are at least 1,000 years old. Archaeologists have discovered remains tracing ancient cultures in Peru. The tombs were found in an area of the site that was used for commemorative banquets to the dead. Some of the skeletons were found without their feet, indicating a ritual was performed on their bodies, commonplace in pre-Hispanic Peru, while others were buried with ceramic pieces. They are said to date the Mochi, who were powerful warriors and famous craftsmen, as well as the Lambayeque, a people of sailors and trading travellers. Both cultures settled in the area near the coastline from around 600 to 1000 CE, but fell victim to natural disasters that ruined their cities.
The most spectacular discovery at this site is the form of a D, which is an exact copy of the existing temple in the Wari zone in the Wari Cultural Center.
The excavation has been ongoing for 3 months and will help historians learn about the civilizations preceding the Inca Empire. Up to 45% of Peru's population traces its roots to pre-Columbian civilizations.